Oh, that's an old image. That's from yesterday. Alright, so I don't actually need to use any of the gaming stuff today. I'm going to be doing something a little different today. We're going to remove the gaming stuff entirely. I'm going to pull up window capture for a minute. See, this video right here from Garand, um, how to evade a professional military unit, or tracking and counter tracking. Um, Kind of a thing, and kind of a reality here. He said in the first 2 minutes. I haven't even watched the whole thing through yet. I this video. I know normally I would do a video after watching someone's complete video, but his intro alone kind of deserves a small little oh really moment, because I think it's time that the world has a massive oh really moment. Um, Here's the thing. When you are the target of a sniper, you do not know where that sniper is, and he is usually a very far distance away. And this is me making an analogy, so don't take this to heart, but it is true, right? Like, and even a Call of Duty gamer can attest this. Usually, unless it's some jack wagon running around no scoping or quick scoping. Normally, snipers in military games are finding a place to camp or hide, and they make it a purpose to not be seen or heard. Well, that's a very, very good point to what he said about things seeming far away. Just because a sniper is far away does not mean they cannot reach out and touch you. And that is true for what he's talking about here. People don't like to escape their normalcy bias and see that the United States is not liable to be invaded from a foreign invader until just recently. Now we have an open border. Now we're being invaded right at this very moment. And I'm not talking about, South Americans or Central Americans coming into North America either. I'm talking about people that are not from those areas using our open border against us. And it is going to happen, and it's what Elon Musk was warning about. And it is a real security risk. Some of these people are going to come in looking like young military-aged men, but they'll probably be older than what they really are. People on the internet need to realize the United States itself has a specific unit designated to fitting in with a foreign population and putting the screws to it. We call it the Army Rangers. We also call it the CIA, right? Like, we have two different organizations in our own government that we use to do these things. What makes us think that another foreign government is not going to do the same thing we're doing against us? You're brain dead if you think that way. You really are. And it's not me being paranoid. This is a legitimate national security concern that people are just going to brush under the friggin' table again, because they're gonna sit there and cite the whole George Bush WMD report. Well, there's big differences between then and now. Then we had counter reporting. Then we had people saying, yeah, no, they don't have them yet, but they could in the future. We had things countering the narrative that was set by certain people in the national security circles, and we the people didn't find out about it until 2015. I mean, and by we the people, I mean normal everyday Joe didn't hear about it. Most conspiracy theorists had it pretty well nailed down and figured out, and a lot of them were on the left. So, at the end of the day, what it ended up being was a simple matter of, people not listening to all the necessary and pertinent information, only what they were told and what people thought they needed to be told. Well, in reality, in this modern age, we have massive and very quick ways of receiving multiple sources of information. I have like 4 different active screens right now, all of them with about 4 different pieces of information on them. I have YouTube on my TV, Facebook on my computer, a video game on my video game stuff, and my phone, I scroll through Twitter. I absorb more information in an hour than most people used to in a day prior to the advent of the internet. Is it all useful information or is it all useless information? Well, that's up to me. I click where I want to go, right? Or I tap where I want to go. But a lot of people out there say that that's a sign of mental illness and yada yada yada. And I say no, it's just called being aware of your surroundings. I don't do it all the time. I have other things that I do with my life, like weightlifting, which I'm getting started in. I just bought a 25-pound weight, and I just did my 7 reps 2 times in each arms, one doing arm curls and the other one doing above my head, overheads. And I'm going to do some, once the snow gets gone and it stops raining, I intend to slap on my goods and go out for a run, because I need to tone down on the weight that I'm consuming, which, thanks to the good old American fucking diet, right? Vitamin supplements that are loaded with sugar and, other nasty shit that my body probably won't even be able to process properly. But I take them anyway out of the hope that they somewhat friggin' work. Anyway. Ugh. Here's the thing though. What a lot of people don't understand is that while I do that with 4 screens, I'm taking in a lot of information. Well, I've been taking in a lot of information about firearms platforms, how to start a fire, how to set up various shelters, how to decode a fire hole, absorbing mentally the information so I can use it later. Well, that's fine and good, and I think a lot of people out there it'd be a better time investment than a lot of what they do, absorbing this information. And I know there's going to be some people out there saying, how can you absorb information while you're playing a video game? Video games are so effortless for me that, it's like smoking a cigarette. Do I do great at video games? Nah. Terrible at them, are you kidding? But it is something to keep my hands busy, and it does keep me out of the cigarettes, so it's my coping mechanism for not smoking right now. Now, and oh, by the way, if we want to talk about stuff that I actually enjoy, that would be anime and watching movies with my significant other. Those are what I actually enjoy. The video games are just something to keep me from going up to the store, which is walking distance from where I live, buying a cheap $5... I can't believe that $5 is now cheap for a pack of cigarettes, by the way. Oh, there's 6 now. Oh, God. Correction, $6. Jesus. They're even worse than I thought. Going up there with the $6 to go buy a pack of smokes and ruining my health any further than I already am by sitting on my butt watching YouTube all day. Which, again, is something that is more prevalent during the winter months, because winters in Maine are just not... Well, this winter in Maine wasn't even that bad, actually. We only had, 2 power outages, and one of them didn't even last, a few hours. The other one lasted for a couple of days, which is normal, 3 days, that we had to heat our home using a My Buddy heater, because here's a news flash for you there, honey. Sometimes your oil-based furnaces, they use electricity, and if you're not smart enough to know that, then, good luck freezing, and good luck having to panic rush buy at freaking Walmart, because you're out of power, you're out of heat. That's something people don't often realize. These modular homes, they don't do so well without electricity now, do they? So we went up and we bought the My Buddy heater, 2 big old cans of propane and the hoses to hook them up, and we survived it. We went out and got our jugs full of water for flushing the toilet and doing dishes and cooking, and, made sure that we were stocked up on cooking fuel, which I keep 10 canisters, 10 of the little canisters of butane for my cooking stove for when it does come time to cook without power. So we made out just fine, but there are people out there who don't prepare in advance and don't have the money set aside, or don't have, have not talked to their bank about what the details of their overdraft account are, for emergency purposes. These people don't even know that, some people don't even know that some of this stuff exists. And it's like, y'all are sitting there saying, oh, life is fine. We'll be just fine in our normalcy bias. And I'm sitting there like, all right, well, let's think about that for a hot second there. Remember that analogy of the sniper. It might seem like it's far away, but it can still reach out and touch you in some little way that you might not like. Right? And that's true. It is true. Like, and even as a Christian, and I know I just had a very non-Christian rant on Oh Really the other day, but like, even as a Christian, I hear a lot of other Christians saying it's in God's hand, it's in God's hand, it's in God's hand. Well, God also knew that, the disciples are human. They need to eat. Food's got to happen, man. Self-defense has got to happen. God knows this stuff. Like, he knows it's going to happen. And it's just like, everyone out there and their brother is going to sit here on this platform when they see this video, and I'm going to get flamed as a conspiracy theorist and all this other stuff, right? Look at what France is doing. They're trying to pass a law where if you even speak out against certain medical treatments, you could go to jail. You could go to prison in France for saying the wrong thing. That is what we're coming to. This is France we're talking about. France that, by the way, the United States actually was inspired for free speech through France. They gave us the Statue of Liberty. And here we are, sitting here like nothing bad can ever happen. And we have so many other countries as historical examples of, of all this stuff that can go wrong. That is not the rapture of Jesus Christ. It is not the second coming of Jesus Christ, or the rapture of the church. It could be civil war in your own country. I forget what Bible verse it was, but like, the Bible directly says that as men, we're responsible for the safety and security of our kids and wives. Like, oh my word. What happened to Cain when he looked at God and said, am I my brother's keeper? God chastised the ever-living crap out of him for it. And that was just his brother. I'm sitting here talking about the women that you marry, and women for your husbands that you marry, and the children that you have together. And you people are going to sit here in church and online and honestly tell me, like to my face, that it's mental illness to make sure that if the power goes out, you're not, you have an extra way so you're not going to freeze to death. How brain dead is that take? Oh my word. The Bible itself even promotes being prepared for things, but not specifically in the physical matter. The whole book of Revelations is to prepare you spiritually for the end times. Not so much that you may experience them in real life on this earth, but, some would say that we are. But the fact that the resurrection of the saints and the resurrection of the church that, had died and gone into the grave, you'll be seeing these things for yourself. It's to prepare you spiritually so you know what to expect some of what to expect when it comes around. And you guys are going to sit there and say that having a little bit of extra food in the house and some water to flush your toilets and some way to heat your place during the winter if the power goes out it makes you mentally ill. I have to flip the script on you and say you're the ones who are mentally ill prepared to deal with the world that we live in. We're not part of it, in the spiritual sense, but physically speaking, we're still responsible to the same rules as every other human being. The laws of getting sick and the laws of physics, and we're not going to magically transcend some law of physics just because we go to church on Sunday. That's not how that works. If God grants you with that blessing, then you got really lucky. And you really do need to praise Him. But at the end of the day, you need to really realize that the world still applies. The rules of this world still apply while you're here. And you are responsible to bring up your children to be survivors in this world. They need to learn how to thrive and survive. And I'm not talking just the 9 to 5 go to work stuff. I'm talking about how to keep themselves out of sin. How to keep themselves on the straight and narrow so they don't do something stupid. How to live a good Christian life. And I'm not talking the kind of good Christian life that's the pastor that gets up on stage on Sunday and then on Monday is going to jail for touching some minor inappropriately. I'm talking about the real Christian faith, where you actually live it, not just teach it. And the people who do what I just mentioned before, are the perfect example of those who can't do teach. Obviously, he couldn't do it, so he taught it. That's a bad joke at his expense. But no, no, people need to stop. They just need to stop. All right, like. Okay, how am I not moving this the right way? Oh, that's because I'm using the wrong thing. I keep seeing the mouse on my OBS and thinking it's my actual mouse and not the other way around because my brain no worky so good. No, anyway. But look, I could turn this into a massive, sermon on this stuff, right? And 90% of it would be hypocrisy. I'm 312 pounds overweight. I'm overweight by 112 pounds, basically is what that means, right? I'm in the process of working on it, which is more than some people can say out there in the world, but, at the end of the day, Grantham is right, and I'm not saying he's wrong. He's definitely right on this matter. Absolutely correct. You don't know what you don't know, and you have no idea what a foreign government is going to do. I'd argue that 80% of the time, you don't even know what the United States government's going to do. Canada, Mexico, take it even smaller. Your local and state government, you don't know what they're going to do. Next thing, you could go to bed at night, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with ninja boots to your neck, and they're going to sit there and say, this is at the order of your town government. For all you know. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, that's a massively hyperbolic and overblown example, but it's a good point. Do I think ninjas exist? Oh, sure. I mean, you could call me a conspiracy nut on that, but I think they do exist. And do I think that they're a real threat in modern society? Probably they are, but if we're being perfectly honest with you, assassination in general is not really the way that political figures do things anymore. Not usually. Unless you're Putin, then it's just another dose of scrambled eggs and cheese for breakfast for that guy. Taking out the opposition through physical force is just kind of his MO. And making it look like an accident is another MO. Which is why I highly doubt, even if someone did offer him a peaceful way out of the whole Ukraine thing, I don't think he'd take it, to be honest. And that's just my honest opinion. There's only one way out with Putin, and that is to find a way to permanently remove him from the national stage as a world leader, one way or another. Don't take my word for it, though. I'm not Mr. Professional Military Analyst, but, I'm not saying SEAL Team 6 or nothing, but, there's gotta be more than enough people in Russia that are just sitting there scared in their homes because of how bad things are, but, they don't dare speak out against it because of two reasons. Number one, they could end up dead because of speaking out against their government. But number two, who's to say who comes in next won't be worse? And that's another problem with assassination and why people don't use it. You kill... Alright, this is gonna get me banned on YouTube, I know it is, but like, the reason we don't do political assassinations, and the reason why political assassination does not work, is because normally when you do that, the person that goes in after that person is usually about 10 times worse than the one that was in there before. That's why we don't do the whole assassination game. That's why we never will in the United States. And when we do it, you never know that it's us, right? So, anyway, beside the point. Oh, by the way, that's just for other national leaders, too. Like, if you're out there saying something that your government doesn't like, and you're a vocal enough voice, but don't have enough people paying attention to what you're saying, like, you could still easily disappear. You can still disappear. That's a little tidbit, and by the way, I'm drinking this, but I'm not sponsored. That is a reality, like, worldwide. Worldwide. If the U.S. government does not want you to say something, they'll make it so you can't say it. They've already proven that. Look at the Twitter files. And I bet you when the Facebook files become public, and when the YouTube, Google files become public, you'll find that they had way more involvement than they did with Twitter. And they're just hiding their butts behind the whole, we just sent them suggestions line. But, it goes back to what I was saying, though. Like, you never know what your government's doing, and you never really will. And, yes, the internet is fast. Sure. But there is no civilian that does not have some sort of security clearance, and I have to specify that. If you're a civilian without security clearance, you are not going to get any kind of military access to anything at all. That is the reality. Like, that's what you have to live with, is the fact that you're not going to have the second by second play by play of what's going to happen. You're only going to get some rough shoddy details, right? Like, take, for example, the COVID thing, actually. I guarantee you that the federal government actually did know that it had these side effects. But they were put in such a state of worry and panic about COVID being so freaking deadly that they decided that these side effects just weren't, that they did a risk assessment, which is what you do. And this is actually not criticizing them about COVID-19. This is actually lending to what would normally be a very fairly credible thing. They probably did a risk assessment and said, all right, so the risk of people not taking this potentially outweighs the risk of them, what's the word? No, I have that backwards. The risk of people not taking this is greater than the risk of them not taking it, so we need to push people to take it, is most likely the thought process that happened, and people are going to criticize the federal government for this all day, and rightly so to a degree, but, like, you don't, like, how long did the polio vaccine take to become viable without severe side effects? How long did all of our other vaccines take in lab research and otherwise to not have these severe side effects, And it's really not even the company's fault itself. They said, hey, we have this research going on. We have this vaccine in process, and we're putting it at the fastest we can put it out. And the government, under Trump, mind you, said, we'll give you however much money and whatever you want in order to get this vaccine out, which gave them immunity from prosecution, courtesy of the stuff from COVID, which was a huge mistake. I think that in order to have a viable vaccine, you need to take the time to do the testing. You have a laundry list of things that need to be done. You can't just rush into human testing. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. So, yeah. What should have happened in a perfect world. All right. In a perfect world. And I know I'm going to get dinged on YouTube for bringing up the Wuhan thing. Whoa, yeah. All right. Go read the congressional notes where they found that the Wuhan leak theory was more than just a theory. It was actually a plausible, very highly possible, likely outcome. And that was from congressional records, so if you have a problem with that, take it up with Congress, not me. But let's use that as an example. In the ideal, perfect of worlds where all nations get along just fine, right? The second that it happened, China should have made the notes, like, public that it happened everywhere. Everyone on every corner of the planet should have had access to the research data. And then the federal government should have said, okay, these groups of companies, let's say from 6 different countries, and not just the American federal government either, I mean like NATO or something. These 6 different companies get to come on board, send us your best of your best, give us whatever you can for a vaccine or a treatment to lessen the symptoms as quickly as you can and as safely as you can. And then they should have open sourced the whole thing for the whole world to see, not covered up a single thing, right? And as far as the lockdowns go, this is my biggest critique of the lockdowns. Locking people who were not sick in their homes, terrible idea. Isolating people who were sick in their homes for a week or two, fine, right? And we did that here in Maine. We did. We did not shut our whole state down. We shut down the people who were sick and said they can stay home. All right? But there were states out there that completely, like, shuttered their doors. And Maine, by the way, Maine got hit pretty hard even doing what it did. Like, I remember going to McDonald's during COVID, and the line was huge because there was only, like, 2 people working that day. And I'm just like, all right, nope, it's not a big deal. I haven't even placed an order yet. The line is backed out to the road, and there is an offshoot right here that I can just go somewhere else, right? Like, and I didn't have McDonald's that day. I turned around, I went to a grocery store chain called Hannaford, and I bought a pre-made sandwich. I went and did all this other stuff. And by the way, before people get on my case about trying to defend people, I'm an anti-vaxxer. I do not have any of the COVID vaccines, and I will never get them because they were rushed. It has nothing to do with, oh, they have all these other side effects, blah, blah, blah. No, they were rushed. And as soon as we get a more refined version of the COVID vaccine in the next 10 years, I will take it. I will absolutely will take it. But I'm not going to take it until I know for a fact that all the bugs are worked out. And that's really what that boils down to. Or, well, enough of the bugs to where I feel like it's not going to be jeopardizing my health and safety. And that is my decision to make, not the government's, not my boss's. That is no decision for anyone on this planet to make but me. And that is what a lot of people were trying to sidestep during the whole COVID thing. Was they were trying to say that people were killing grandma because they didn't get the vaccine, which, by the way, if you want to fact check that, there's a ton of Twitter logs that show that. That exact comment being used by certain individuals in this very country. Were saying stuff like that, and I'm like, no, I live with my grandmother. She's in perfect health. We've both probably had COVID twice, and you know what? We're just fine. She's still alive and kicking, and I'm doing all right. My fiance is doing great, and our dog is doing amazing. So, kind of take it as you will. And yes, before I hear any more grandma's boys jokes, I do kind of live with my grandmother right now. It's a money-saving measure because we're in the process of building a house. When your state's minimum rent is $1,200 a month, it tends to get a little bit nuts. And yes, we could, if I went out and worked a regular job instead of building a house, if I wasn't working on fixing a vehicle and doing a bunch of other stuff, I could go out and hold a job and go rent and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's not how we're doing it. We have no intention of renting. We will own, whether the government likes it or not. Because there are landowners' rights in the United States. You have to know what they are. You have to look them up. They are given to you by the government, mind you, but that's the way that particular keychain works. Now, your constitutional rights, that's a whole other matter. Those are your rights some of your rights gifted to you by God, but enshrined by man. In this case, the United States government is founded upon the belief that those are your fundamental human rights. That is what your constitutional rights are. And the second that the United States government starts going against that document is when they start losing their legitimacy, which, by the way, they already have on numerous occasions attempted to go against or tried to infringe upon certain rights in the Constitution in certain various ways. I mean, to varying degrees. I'm not going to say it's an absolute loss for the government as far as their legitimacy, because that's not the case, but, like, in some cases, in some things, I'd say that they absolutely have no right to tell you what you can and can't say. Like, freedom of speech is absolute. Freedom of religious practice and exercise is absolute. You know, the list kind of goes on, right? The Second Amendment is unnecessarily complicated, I think. And I think it's gotten that way unnecessarily because, like, you should be able to have whatever small arms you see fit. I think you should be able to have a tank. Although, good luck paying for the fuel bill for it and paying for the ammunition if you have a fully functional tank, because that's pricey. You know, like, people need to understand when people like me go out there and say, I think that the Second Amendment applies to every weapon on the planet, including biologicals and nuclear weapons. When we say that with the absolute understanding of no normal everyday Joe is going to afford nuclear material. No everyday average Joe is going to afford biological research data or any of the materials required for that. No everyday average Joe is going to be able to afford a tank, let alone the fuel or the ammunition to properly maintain, and the manpower, by the way, because most tanks are a 2 to 3 person unit. They're not just a 1 person thing. Most tanks. You know, these things are all true because, like, dude, the price of the diesel for tanks it can get pretty nuts because they have pretty decent sized tanks. You know, fuel tanks here, I'm saying. I'm not saying, like, well, I mean, the tanks themselves are very impressive, and if I could get one that's demilled and has, like, none of the engine stuff in it, I'd probably live out of the thing like a camper just because I think they look cool, but but it'd have demilled written, like, in spray paint on the tank barrel so the whole world could see it. Demilled, of course, meaning that it's demilitarized. The gun doesn't function. The tank itself probably can't drive. You know, the usual shtick to say, yes, this is a tank. No, it doesn't drive. No, it doesn't shoot. It's the same principle I have with, heaven forbid, I should say, the M82 Barrett, because I freaking love the way that gun looks. I would never be able to afford one with an intact firing mechanism, but I would get one just to put on a wall, just to say, hey, looky what I found. It looks good on my wall, doesn't it? And every gun tuber out there is going to sit there and say, why did you waste your money on one that doesn't work? Well, I got a question for you. Without your YouTube channel, in the case of Brandon Herrera, without your gun manufacturing business, could you afford the bullets for the thing? Because I can't. That's all I can do to upkeep my 5.56 and 45. It's insane. I actually had to cut back on how much I shoot because of it. Like, I'm literally stuck doing dry drills, clearing, like, house clearing using a laser pointer, basically, because $20 for a box of 5.56 is a little outrageous. And that's not no 20 rounds either. That's only like, well, actually, that's probably exactly 20 rounds. If you're lucky, 25. If you want 30, 40, or 50, you better bust out the budget and figure out where you can cut some corners. Just as a thought, you know, something that a lot of prepping channels and a lot of gun tubing channels do have right is ammo's still pricey, man. Ammunition's still expensive. Gun maintenance is expensive too, you know. When you own a firearm, people don't understand, like, everyday Joe, if you were to walk up to an anti-gunner with the information of what it costs to maintain training, maintenance, and storage of your firearms, they'd sit there and ask you, why do you do it? Like, they would. And it's probably the only thing out there that I would agree with them on, is like, why do we do it to ourselves? And then I'd suddenly come up with the answer of, because it's our right and it's our duty as Americans to make sure that we are armed against threats, foreign and domestic, and to defend our homes and our family and our loved ones, and sometimes, in some cases, our communities, and even our government. If, hey, that's something too people don't realize. The Second Amendment exists so the civilian population, if we have to fight back, we can fight back. Not saying that a large portion of us civilians are out there physically fit or mentally fit enough to be able to do that, but like, the Second Amendment is written the way that it is for several reasons, right? But I think the thing that the government gets so twisted up in its sense of wanting to control what we do day to day, right? They should be actually pushing for more of us to be mentally stable, physically fit, all wielding firearms and whatever modern weapons technology exists, because when you stop and you think about it, we're actually the last line of defense. If the military's out, if your Coast Guard's out, your National Guard's gone, your militias get screwed over, everyday civilian, Betty Sue with her shotgun in the kitchen might be what's left. I'm sorry, but it's a hard reality, but it's one that we kind of got to think about a little bit. Does that mean that we all need to be pointing guns at each other? No, that goes back to the division and infighting in this country. Like, yes, people have mental illness. Do not stigmatize them for it. Support them, help them, try to get them the help that they need, right? And the same thing goes for the racism stuff. The left seems very intent on destroying this country by causing these divisions that actually, right up until about 2012, we were doing quite well with, I was dating a black woman at the time. My life was pretty good before 2012 rolled around, I had 2 different women that I were with that were black, and I enjoyed every second of it. One of them was the huge comic book nerd, and by the way, we sat down, we didn't do anything inappropriate. We sat down and we talked about the Flash comics for hours on end and the Flashpoint paradox that had just came out very shortly before that. We were discussing all this stuff and having a grand old time, We went out and we watched movies together, played video games together, had a good time, and that was that. It was a very pleasant experience. And yes, I'll admit, I probably got a couple of strange looks rolling into her gated community where a lot of people of color that were there probably saw a white boy getting out and, seeing his girlfriend off to her home. They probably were thinking, what's going on here? But, that's on them. I didn't see that as a problem. I saw that as, I never thought about her skin color once until after 2012. It was like a year or two after me and her broke up. And I deeply regret that we did. It wasn't anything personal. It was just, we just kind of fell out with each other was all that it was. That, and at that point in time, I wasn't exactly in a good place in my life. I was kind of in between the whole party boy phase back when I was in my 20s or early 20s to growing up and getting college educated, which I say college educated, what I mean is going to an awesome school that actually taught me a skill, which was automotive repair, by the way. Which, you know what? Gonna say it, automotive repair, HVAC technologies, welding, medicine, practicing law and business and some sort of business school, I would argue that those are worth it. And to a degree, cosmology, doing people's hair and whatnot, maybe that to a degree. But there's one thing that my school did not have a lot of, and that was these liberal arts degrees at that time. And because of that, a lot of more snooty colleges said, then you went to a trade school, you didn't go to a college. Actually, it's called Arkansas Technical University. It has the word university right in the name, so you don't have to like it, but there it is. And, I learned how to work on gas engines, diesel engines. I learned how to weld. I learned a lot of different things at that school. And, I can I could at that point in time highly recommend the school. I don't know how much has changed because it's been years since I've been, and I'm not going to dog on them about things that I know nothing about because of, the way the collegiate system actually is in this country. But, like, I'm not going to go there because they were so good to me. And I learned things. I actually learned how to work on vehicles there. Do I think that I had to take a psychology course and did I think that was stupid? Yeah, a little bit. Like, what am I going to do? Take the car that the customer just came into me with a fuel leak and put it on a couch and ask it how badly was it beat by its owner? No, I'm going to get under the car with a fuel line cutting system and a patch system for fixing the fuel lines. A nice little a joiner bit for the fuel lines, and I'm going to patch it up and send them on their way. Or if they want me to replace the whole line, I'll get in there with a fuel line wrench and I'll do all of that. Oh, by the way, just as a thing, you have to depressurize the fuel system before you do either one, so that's a safety thing that I have to throw out there because of YouTube's standards. But, like, you people do understand what I'm saying. Like, some of the stuff that they make you do in college just doesn't make any sense. And they tried to do the whole liberal leftist thing at one point in time. It was not my English teacher, though. It was my psychologist. My psychology teacher. I didn't buy into it. The sociology and history teachers also tried to do that stuff. None of us bought it. It was just something that we just kind of shrugged off and we said, yeah, well, here are the facts. Fun fact, the United States is not stolen ground, it is conquered territory. Look up the difference if you don't understand the difference between property theft and conquering in a military conflict, and what spoils of war means. If you do not know what that is, then that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. And it is not considered theft. It's actually considered its own separate entity. Now, we don't, by the way, actually, we still do spoils of war. It's just not as direct as it used to be. It's nowhere near as direct as it used to be. But, like, anyway, yeah, I think Garand Thumb's intro was great. I think y'all need to snap out of your normalcy bias and realize that, shit's going downhill quick. And the stuff that seemed like a sniper off in the distance that you knew about, well, buddy, that sniper off in the distance that you knew about is not using a 22 long rifle. He's out there with a nice 338, and he can definitely reach you if he needs to. That's where the chaos is, and that's what they're packing. And you people need to start planning accordingly because chaos is coming to the States. Chaos has already been here twice. People like to say the summer of love was not riots. Yeah, explain the burning, explain the property damage and the death. And that's another little sticking point, Like, people are going to sit there and argue and argue and argue about all this stuff. But the facts are the facts, right? Like France passing a bill that makes it illegal for you to speak out against state-approved medical treatments is a real thing. They just passed it. They made it so if you speak out against anything that their state government has endorsed as being law, then, or as being safe, then, you can go to jail for a year, and I think I forget what the monetary fine was. Or I could be wrong, it could be 4 years, and the monetary fine was a couple $100,000, whatever their currency is over there. But, like, it is a thing, it does exist, and you fact checkers out there are going to say, oh, no, it doesn't do that. Yes, it does. Read the law. Spend the time reading stuff. Stop telling people what your overlords tell you to tell them, and read the law for yourself. But there again, I live in the States, not over there. We have freedom of speech. If I want to criticize a medication here in the United States, I have every legal right to do that. Just like I have every legal right to criticize the government. And you know what? The COVID vaccines were not as safe as we were told by our government. Shocker. We were told something by our government we were told something was safe by our government that ended up not being. Well, gee, where have we heard that before? Cigarettes, Coca Cola. I mean, asbestos, for crying out loud, at one point in time was promoted as a good building material. Turns out it can kill you. I mean, it's just. And a lot of people are going to say, well, that's because they're not medical, blah, blah, blah. Dude, they used to have cocaine and Coca Cola, and the United States government was just happy go lucky to go along with Coca Cola being in this country. They didn't have a single problem with it until they realized that there was a problem with it. You know, it is a natural function. You don't know that there's a problem until you can see that there's a problem. And when you rush a vaccine and you don't do the proper testing, you don't know about these problems. You push the vaccine off to whomever, and this is not just applying to COVID. This is for the next pandemic. It's just a good reminder of people, governments are run by people. People are not perfect. And I think that instead of sitting here, like, bitching and arguing over it, and trying to figure out who was right or wrong, I think we should just improve upon what went bad last time and make it not as bad the next time. I mean, seriously, instead of letting these companies in these other countries dictate what viruses are going to come to our soil, or, let nature dictate what viruses evolve naturally, which, by the way, they don't usually, they just kind of happen. They've been there for thousands of years, but they don't actually cross the genetic barrier typically. And it usually takes them thousands and thousands of years to do that. But, like, it's just a matter of, we need to stop with this attitude of, on one side, overly criticizing, right? Because, yes, there were mistakes made. Everyone can see it. The censorship of the COVID thing was a huge mistake. People not being able to speak out about, other research that showed, yes, these are risk factors that are attached to it. Instead of censoring those people, they should have been further embraced, and it should have been looked into, and it should have been dealt with, right? Like, if you know something is wrong, let's say I make a video game. This is the best example that I have. Just hear me out. Let's say I make a video game, right? And I make a video game map that looks absolutely gorgeous from the character view. Now, someone out there makes a mod of it, and they zoom out, and they realize that my map is actually a giant picture of what looks like someone's genitals, basically. Well, I should probably get into my map editor and, maybe make it look a little less like someone's junk, just on principle. I mean, even if no one out there is going to really realize that the map looks like a giant piece of junk, someone's junk, then, which, by the way, as a game developer, if you make a map like that, you're making a map like that. That's the best example that I had. I mean, the only other thing I could think of was maybe, like, something in the story that on original typing seemed harmless enough, but then you go into it and you're like, oh my god, this makes this main character sound like a real jerk. So then you go in and you edit the text, right? You don't sit there and remove the entire main character or the entire map. That destroys your game. It's the same thing with the vaccine. You just destroyed your credibility. Instead of embracing these other people that were saying these things, like, these vaccines, hey, they have problems and you need to address the problems, they just sat there and said, no, shut up, you can't talk about that. That was not the right approach. Is really where the real criticism lies, is in the approach of it. What should have been happening is we all should have had a public conversation on these platforms like we do with everything else on, Twitter, or now X, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. Instagram. Anyway, I used to be that way about Twitter, and I still kind of am. The point is just like, and it feels like instead of learning from our lesson, the doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on the stupid, right? Like, I get it. Saying that an inhaler that you've been taking for all of your life for your asthma and having someone come along and say, that's gonna kill you someday. Yeah, asthma probably would kill you a little faster. To be honest. Gonna be honest there, the asthma's more likely gonna do it than your inhaler, right? But we all know this stuff. So it's just like, yeah, people need to chill out on both sides. By the way, the side doing the criticizing needs to chill out too, because like, what happens when you criticize someone all the time and never give them you never give them props when they don't, right? Like, then there's no way they're gonna win. They feel like there's no way they can win because you're not giving them any sort of, praise or props or anything. You're constantly saying you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, screw you, you're wrong, and you're insulting them. Well, then you have a problem, and constantly bagging on them at every turn about being wrong about certain things in the vaccine is just not appropriate. And I'll say that. I'll say that absolutely. It's not a defense of them being wrong. It's just like, when they're right, let them be right because they're right, not because they tell you that they're right, but because they actually are right. You need to. It's like it's with dog training. You don't beat the dog when the dog's doing a good job. That's really it. You don't discipline the dog when the dog's being good, behaving. You discipline the dog when he's misbehaving, and you reward him when he's behaving, when he's doing good. It's the same thing with government. You give them incentives for when they do the right thing, for when they do good. When they're doing bad, well, that's when the legal system gets involved and we spend, 10 to 20 years of our life arguing over who was wrong, apparently. Instead of, actually sitting there saying, yes, we know you did this. Yes, we know it was wrong. Here's your consequence and have a nice day. Like, instead we're going to sit here and waste years upon years criticizing political figures for decades. And you know what? Hillary Clinton is probably one of the most vile women I'll ever talk about on this channel. And I mean that straight up there with fucking Thatcher, right? And by the way, if you don't know about Thatcher, you need to do some research. She was the one who promoted abortion as a way of eugenicizing certain minority groups in the United States, and you can look that up. She did say it. She was one of the founders of the current day feminism abortion movements. Yeah, if you know, you know. But like, all right, let's go hypothetical here. Let's say Hillary Clinton, let's say Hillary Clinton won the presidency, right? But instead of being some war hawk, gun grabbing twat nugget, and yes, I just use that, yeah. Let's say she said, you know what, screw the politics for a minute, the country's in the toilet, we need to rebalance the budget, I'm not going after guns, we're not starting any new wars, we're just going to balance the budget. And we actually ended up in the green or the black for it, instead of being in the red. Then I'm not going to sit there and beat her over the head for all this stupid stuff beforehand. I mean, I still might, but like, I'm also going to compliment her and say, good job on balancing the budget, right? You're not. It really does work that way, and that's kind of what it is. Like, I can't stand Bill Clinton. I think he's a perv. I think I have my own personal opinions about him that are not, I think Family Guy with the, with him skipping nude down his driveway to get the mail kind of depicted Bill Clinton pretty well, but that's just kind of my take. Anyway, and I do think their entire family is corrupt and very scummy, but like, you can still credit a bad person for doing a good thing, right? It does not make you a bad person to do that. Like, I can't think of anything good that Hitler did, but that's because he's Hitler, and there's not really a lot known about the good or bad things that he did or did not do. It's just that he was pretty much the world's enemy throughout World War II, and everyone couldn't stand, more or less, the whole planet couldn't stand his fucking guts, right? Um, but like Genghis Khan is a good example. Genghis Khan mastered archery and used it to overtake a certain population of the planet. We now use archery nowadays for hunting and gathering and a bunch of other things, right? I would argue that it should be used more militarily speaking, but a lot of military experts out there call me an idiot for that because, because they see the bow and arrow as an antique and less of a modern, actual, viable weapons platform, which, if you've seen compound bows, man, go watch York Sprov sometime and rethink your perspective on that. But anyway, I love his channel. I love the slingshots. It's probably, like, aside from the bushcrafting, preparedness, automotive, and Yu-Gi-Oh videos, York Sprov's channel with the slingshot channel is probably one of my favorite things on YouTube, actually. Watching him use stuff that I don't know where he's from, what government he's under. I thought he said it was Germany, but my memory is so bad, so bad. I don't remember where he said he was from, but like watching someone under a gun control regime using crossbows and slingshots and stuff, it's just as amusing as watching gun tubers. And I'm glad that he's on here, and I hope that he succeeds and continues to do more excellent content. Legitimately probably my most favorite thing on the planet. In fact, I've bought a couple of slingshots from Walmart, and I've been looking at crossbows and all kinds of stuff. I have a compound bow that I bought because I love archery anyway, but he's just like that little dinging bell in the back of my head saying, hey, you don't have a bow anymore. And then, like, last year, I think it was last year, wasn't it, babe? Or no, now it's been 2 years now because of, it's been a while. But, like, I was watching his channel, I'm like, I need to get a bow. I need to get a bow. And there he was. But, on the note of preparedness, people need to go out and buy, like, even if it's just like 2 things, right? 2 cheap things under $10. Go buy 2 compasses if you're a couple. If you're a single person, go buy a compass and one other thing for under $10 for both items, right? Go buy a hatchet. Go buy a folding saw. Alright. Yes, the Silky Boys are the market, like, best of the best. They're also pretty expensive, right? But even if you're not that guy, even if you're the Walmart deluxe shopper, basically, right? You go to Walmart for everything. Go to the sporting goods department. Go into the camping aisle. Look around. Pick out a couple of cheap items within your budget. When you go grocery shopping, when you go clothing shopping, whenever you set foot in Walmart, go there. See what stuff you can build. Not really so much a bug-out bag, but just like some basic equipment, It doesn't have to be for a bug-out bag. My bug-out bag is more used for bugging in. Sometimes I end up having to grab my hatchet or my folding saw off to do yard work, Right now I have a down tree limb. I have an electric chainsaw that I bought from Walmart. I'm going to pop out there with a battery charged, trim the limb down to certain sizes, and either turn them into something, or they're just going to end up, Yes, this is the underpinning. Wind damage from the windstorm that we had. And my sister's supposed to be showing up at some point today, too. Anyway, but, like, just back to the prepping thing, though. Like, heck, you're going to laugh at me. Go buy some bottled water. A flat of bottled water is under $10 in most states, right? In some states, I'm sure it's over that because of taxes and stupid things. But, like, on the normal basis, just go get the stuff that you know you're going to do. A lot of people give ramen bad flack, and yes, it is terrible for you. But it lives a long time in your cupboard. and you only need hot water to make it. So yeah, like if you can make a fire, if you can get water, you can make ramen. You know, I mean, yeah, as far as an MRE goes, that's probably not a good standard to go by, but like back when I was making my little MRE baggies, I was making I was putting ramen in them myself. Man, Facebook's going kaboom today. But at the end of the day, it kind of is what it is. Like, you can afford what you can afford. I'm not saying you have to go out and buy pre-cooked rice in a little mylar pouch and meatballs in a mylar pouch and have rice and meatballs and do all that stuff. But like, just do smaller stuff. Have some ramen handy. Have some basic prep stuff handy. Even if you're not like, all right, look, even if you're on a paleo diet, even if you're on some sort of like caveman diet, right? Even like 90% of you that get your meats do not get your meats sourced locally. I guarantee it. 90% of the people they're saying, oh, I'm on the paleo diet and blah, blah, blah. I guarantee you, most of you are not going to a private butcher and having your meat handed to you from them. You're going to a supermarket. Well, here's the thing. A supermarket is not always going to be open, and you're going to have to find your butcher or you're going to have to find something else to eat. Having something when everything goes down, because, there's no guarantee you're going to get that deer or that fish on your first day in SHTF. In fact, I'd argue that you're probably under so much stress, you're probably going to screw up the hunt 6 ways till Sunday to the degree that you're not going to get any animal at all, and you're going to go hungry because you didn't stock up on other things that you can eat, not that you necessarily should eat it. So no, having a small tote of maybe stuff that you normally wouldn't eat, but has a long shelf life, that you don't have to worry about keeping in your house, maybe just like a week or two's worth, if you're on the paleo diet, to give you that week or two of going out and hunting when SHTF happens, might not be a terrible idea. And there are canned meats that you can get too. I mean, they're not the greatest for you. We're talking about stuff like corned beef hash or canned ham or whatever, but like, And there again, when it comes time to cycle this stuff out because it gets too close to its expiration date, or you feel uncomfortable with it having been in your cupboard for too long, eat a can randomly. Like, you don't have to have it day after day or every week. Just grab like a can of beans that's getting too close to its expiration date, cook it on over the stove, eat your beans, and go for an extra run to burn off the calories, right? Like, yeah, no, And it does technically, quote unquote, break the diet, quote unquote. But as long as you're not eating this crap every freaking day, you're fine, right? And that's when times are good. When times are bad and you end up eating this stuff on a daily basis, you're going to be so physically active with trying to survive that what you put in your body is going to be either sweat out, pooped out, or the other thing. But, like, yeah. I think that's going to wrap it up for this morning. I think people need to chill out. I think people need to prepare. I think that preparedness is oftentimes seen as something that is a panic-worthy thing, and it needs to stop being panic-worthy. You need to stop panic buying and start buying in advance, like what we've been doing. Stocking up on the extra can of vegetables or the extra cheap package of like bulk ramen that's only like $5 and throw it into a cupboard somewhere and forget about it. That's fine, whatever, because then you have it when you need it. Same thing goes with your canned goods, Same thing goes with a lot of things. To be honest with you, a lot of my weight gain has been from lack of exercise, a majority of it. I'm being honest about that. If I was actually out there being physically active like I'm supposed to be, I probably wouldn't weigh as much as I do. And yet, here I am. That's going to change this year because we're going to be building a house. So, you know where I'm going to be if I'm not here on the YouTube channel. I'm going to be up in northern Maine building a house. Right now I live in central Maine. I'm not going to give you the exact town data or whatever. I don't really care about being doxxed or whatever. That doesn't bother me. But, like, no, I just... I understand where some people are like, oh, these people are a threat because I said such and such. And they got mad, and now they're going to come burn my house down, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, well, you know what? That sounds kind of more like a you versus them problem, and if they become a problem for me, then I'll deal with it. Oh, I'll deal with it. But, like, until then, I have no reason to deal with it. Until then, no YouTuber should ever have a reason to deal with it. And that's the truth. Like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe once I get a couple million subscribers and I end up being richer than rich, then maybe some security measures might be necessary, but, like, right now, I'm not worried about it. Not at all. If you want to come to my doorstep, I'll make you some croissant rolls and we can have a cup of tea together or something. I'll make up some green tea and you can enjoy my nasty, flat, non-sweetened green tea while I eat my biscuits. I don't sweeten or flavor my tea in any way. I get my tea just straight tea. But anyway, you know that could have been your health insurance, right?
That was Mass, not Tennessee.
You know they have an office in Mass, right?
That wasn't the number, babe.
Anyway. Hopefully everyone has a lovely day. It's raining and a little windy here today, so won't be doing much outside, but I will be doing a little bit of inside work because we got a house to clean, we got stuff to pack and get ready, and stuff to do, and little time to do it. Hopefully everyone has a lovely day, and I'll see you on the flip side.